start with what? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Gordon. Here. Farland. Here. Kramer. Here. Mackey. Here. Morris. Here. Our civility pledge, pledge to promote civility by listening, being respectful of others, and acknowledging that we are all striving to support and improve our community. Looking to perfect and improve the agenda. Any changes to the agenda?
No changes.
I'll move to perfect and approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, motion by Farland, second by Morris. Gordon. Farland.
Yes.
Kramer.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Takes us to citizens speak. This is time for anybody that would like to speak on anything this evening. Tony?
I apologize, I walked up here, it's colder than I was.
Beautiful today, though. Yeah, it was beautiful out today. That sunshine was awesome.
44. My name is Tony Russo. I live on the corner of Fourth Street in Iowa for 52 years in Solon. We've had a lot of issues in Solon, none more important than the water issue that we're talking about currently. I want to say last spring, we had the results of the US Geological Survey, which said Solon, Silurian, which north of Johnson County, is a finite resource. Finite means in the dictionary, limited, not infinite, and we need to start talking about that. I was astonished this afternoon. I talked to the library and they have agreed and scheduled the state geologist Keith Schilling, who is heroic to a lot of us. He's been standing up to the legislature and all the pro water issues for the last years by himself, by himself. And the Solon Library has scheduled him, our state geologist, to speak on these water issues at the Solon Library on Groundhog Day, February 2nd. And his interest and his desire for some years has been that we start measuring our aquifers. We have the Silurian, but there are a lot of them, but we measure them and monitor them. And he says it's akin to a checking account, that our water is our money in the bank. And we're writing checks and giving different developments and so forth, making commitments with our water. We need to know how it's affecting our bank account and we need to conduct ourselves accordingly. So his desire is to have all of us doing that. He's been fighting for state funding for some years, got $250,000 a couple of years ago, which barely covered anything. And I'm just honored that he's coming to Solon, that the library is having him. I'm not aware that he's done a lot of public speaking. But in fairness, I need to say, don't tell the library. We're also talking about some of us in town, bringing Chris Jones, who's the author of The Swine, what is it, Liz?
Republic.
Thank you, The Swine Republic, which is, he's out, former university employee, he's out taking everybody on, and he has been for some years. And his concern is not Solon's, it's the nitrate, it's the agribusiness contamination of our water. But he's an incredible person, Iowa City, and I'd also like to bring Mr. LaRue, the attorney, Jim LaRue, the attorney who's been representing these guys in some of their legal battles up in the northeastern Iowa. Hopefully that it's going to be a busy year and we're all going to be better informed. And the last thing I want to say, all of these issues are important and none of us know a lot expertise on anything. Thank you to the library for their impartial, courteous, always available source of information. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on anything this evening? All right. That takes us to the consent agenda. So this would be the approval of minutes from the December 17th, 2025 regular meeting, approval of the list of bills, treasurer's report and transfers, building permits, the board and commission appointments, and the event for the 9th annual Lake McBride Fat Tire Classic. Is there anybody from the Fat Tire Classic this evening?
No, but Tim, John and I are all on the line, so we can pass them off to you.
Any major changes from years past at the event?
I don't think there's anything there.
We had a meeting last night. The plan is that they really just come in off the, North Shore Trail. They have the bacon station there at the Timber Dome. We're gonna do that again and then they turn around and go back.
And before I ask for a motion with that, just with some changes to our committees this year, just wanted to run through those. So with the planning and zoning appointments that will be making tonight, Julia Lang and Luke Resort will continue their terms. Luke is filling in for the final year for the vacant spot that Tim had. And then Fernando Olivia area is going to serve a 3-year term as well. So both Tim and Julia will be there with Tim as the counselor rep on there from their experience on P and Z. With the library board of trustees, we have Matt on there as the liaison there. John with Sedge is my alternate with the fire agency. I have Matt on that. And continue with John as mayor pro tem. Replacing Steve Duncan on the city and school with the 28E committee, right? I'll have you cover that and then continue your work as the EMA commission. Now isn't elected official with the commission.
You're off the hook.
You're helping me out big time. And then the other council committee. So streets, Andrew, we'll have you continue on that with Tim. Utilities, we'll have Andrew and Tim on that as well. Finance, John and Greg. Personnel, we'll have Matt and Greg. Building needs and growth, we'll have John and Greg. And police committee, we'll have Andrew continuing on that with Matt. Those are the ones on there. Try to keep it balanced. I think there's around 3 or 4 committees for everybody on that. So try to keep it balanced with everything and appreciate all the time that you guys will be putting in. That. Well, with all that, do we have a motion to consent the agenda?
Move to approve, consent the agenda.
Second. All right, motion by Moore, second by Kramer. Gordon?
Yeah.
Harley?
Yes.
Kramer?
Yes.
Mackey?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Takes us to the fire department report. We will be having our agency meeting next week on that. I'll get the agenda for that, Suze. Greg, you're probably gonna do a heck of a lot better job giving an update.
So the major update I have is that we had for the calendar year, 640 total calls, which is about 70 more than last year. And the 640 is all time high. When I started around 1980, 81, 80 calls was a big deal. So we are busy, morning, noon, and night. And it's not gonna slow down. Part of the deal, what we sign up for.
We appreciate everything.
Yeah.
Move the sheriff's office report. Brad, anything outside of what we'll talk on the agenda?
We covered all at once.
Takes us to the item 10, the public works superintendent reports. Hand over to the guys.
I'd like to welcome the new council and look forward to working with you all. Have a great year. For those of you who don't know, I run the water and the wastewater plants here in town, and currently we're working on upgrading the modems for the communication between all the buildings, water towers and stuff like that. We got some big projects coming up as soon as the weather breaks, so should be busy, excited.
I don't have much, we're just doing day-to-day activities, so.
Same here.
Nice little break in between all the storm. Hopefully it stays that way. I knocked. Takes us to item 11, library report. Liz.
Yes, we had a great turnout on New Year's Eve, 185 people. Thanks to Public Works for helping us hang the balloons and take everything back down and the lift and everything. We couldn't do it without that partnership. I feel like that's a great turnout for the fact that there was something else going on that day, the bowl game. So we're very excited about that. Saturday is the second Saturday, so that means we have a family program planned at the library at 10:30, which this time happens to be pajama play day. So come in your PJs, have fun, listen to stories, play games, do activities. Then that evening will be our Fun for All Night, our partnership with the Recreation Department, 6 o'clock gym games at the community center, and then 7 o'clock Kung Fu Panda 4. If you didn't realize we were already up to 4, you can check out 1 through 3 at the library and get all ready for Saturday night. And we will, of course, have popcorn donated by Tyson's of Coralville again. Looking to the next week then in January, we have a rice bowl class. So an expert is coming in to teach us how to do that. It is all ages. You do need to register, but that will be on Thursday, the 15th at 6 p.m. Let us know if you need help with registration. We can help with that. Our cookbook club will be that Saturday, the 17th. The theme is tailgate treats. That is at 11 o'clock at the library in our meeting room. And then we will also have trivia night this month on Friday, the 23rd at 6:30. That also needs registration, but grab some friends and come be a team. It is so much fun, that trivia night. It's always so creative. Our winter library challenge continues through the month of January. So you still have a chance to earn secret codes, turn in slips, get small prizes, and a chance to win the grand prize, one of the 3 grand prizes. All slips need to be turned in by January 31st. Unless anybody has any questions.
Busy month ahead.
Yes, yeah.
Excellent. It's just item 13, city attorney, Kevin.
I have nothing. You skipped Dave.
Did I skip Dave? Sorry, Dave. Item 12, Dave, sorry.
I'll fill Kevin's spot.
Then he has nothing either.
So we've been working on the wastewater treatment plant, project, the survey crew's been out, they're nearly complete with the Tobo survey. We did receive the effective model from the FEMA today, so we should be able to get moving on that. That's important because we're trying to change the floodplain out there to create more buildable space. So it was good to get that information in. And we've also prepared some preliminary layouts. We're going to be meeting shortly to discuss, how we want that site to look. Came up with about 3 different options. So we'll sit down with staff and go through that. North Market Square, I was contacted yesterday. Maxwell's been out. They televised the sewer at North and Market or Highway 1. And once they get that information compiled, they'll send it to me. We'll make a determination on what that needs to look like. They did indicate that the line that goes from the restaurant here that runs down Highway 1 and goes over that manhole, looks like there's some issues with it. So we're going to take a closer look at that as part of this. The other issue item that we're working on is the indoor turf facility that's out by the middle school. There's a site plan that's being prepared. We've been assisting with gathering information and providing information to the engineer that's preparing that site plan. And then Tammy and I have been working on a number of other miscellaneous items, site plans, and getting things in the queue that are coming here shortly. So that's what we've been up to.
Kevin, I'll skip over since I
You can skip me
had to
again.
go first.
Yeah.
All right, that takes us to recognition and our proclamation. So, first off, Liz, 5 years. I remember, shortly after you accepted the role, John and I had a Zoom call
Yeah.
with you. You were willing to move to Iowa in the heart of COVID. We had our buildings were closed. Just really appreciate everything that you've done. It's hard to believe it's been 5 years, but some things that just jump out that you've done a great job in the role. You're always very organized, always very dependable, always very detail oriented, and you are very passionate and just energetic with everything that you do. So before we need the word, I'll hand it over to Sandy, but just really appreciate everything that you do, and hope we have you for a heck of a lot more than 5 more. So thank you for the 5 that you
I hardly need to say anything. I'm Sandy Lawrence. I'm president of the Board of Trustees at the library. We have 2 other board members and a staff member here too to celebrate those 5 years. Now, I'm very proud to say I was chair of the committee that hired Liz. So, but we did have to convince her to come to Iowa. So, but we had a good product to sell because Chris Brown had been library director for 30 years and shepherded into a new building and build programs that they couldn't do in the space before, which was very, very little. And so we were able to sell our library programs, and Liz has come and expanded them. But unfortunately, her first several months were the COVID years. So there are all kinds of questions about how do we build back programming and keep people safe? What size groups can we have that people will feel comfortable in coming back to COVID? And in some cases, just having groups together again because we've been so separated through COVID. And I remember the preschool story times when we first started them again. Those little 3, 4-year-olds had never been in groups before, because most daycares were closed. So I remember our library personnel at the time saying, usually you have 4-year-olds that model the behaviors for the 3-year-olds and the 2-year-olds, but nobody could model any behaviors because nobody had been in a story time group setting before. So it was all those issues about how do we restart all the programming, and Liz handled that beautifully, and we kept people safe and began building back services. Today, it's a busy place, as our mayor mentioned, that there are all kinds of activities going on all the time, and I had down that we had over 180 people, family members, participate in the balloon drop. And we've just had several, even when we talk about the library being a place for public conversations, for groups to come together to talk about issues in the community or opportunities in the community. And thanks to the city staff, sometimes the library is the second place they come to after they sign up for their water bills. The staff has been pretty good about, we have a library down the street, you might want to sign your family up. And so the library has become a really important part, I think, of a strong Solon community. And I think you'll find that strong libraries are important in every community that's looking to move forward. It's an important place to bring people together, and we'll hope to continue another 5 years or longer building our library. I would be remiss if I didn't add that our library is 25 years old this year, so you will hear more from us about how we plan to celebrate the 25th anniversary building down there. So congratulations, Liz, on 5 years. We're delighted you're here, and keep up the great work.
Just get off for a while.
Ready? There you go.
You want me to look at your?
Yeah. You wanna be in the picture? Yeah. That's it. Susie, want me to take the picture?
You get yelled at too?
Well, for so much. Just together. Gotcha.
Oh, one more.
Ready? There we go.
Thanks for you.
Such a great thing.
That's what there.
I'm gonna run back.
I'm driving. That takes us to item 15, the Human Trafficking Prevention and Awareness Month. So the proclamation that we have, whereas human trafficking is the use of force, fraud, or coercion to compel a person into commercial sex acts or labor services against their will. The commercial sexual exploitation of a minor constitutes human trafficking under the law, regardless of whether force, fraud, or coercion is present. There's no such thing as child prostitution. And whereas human trafficking is a hidden and underreported crime with victims, especially children, experiencing fear, trauma, and manipulation, and despite growing awareness, only a small number of cases are identified and prosecuted, as shown in 2022, when more than 661 victims received services through Iowa's direct service programs, while only 3 individuals were convicted in federal court and 4 in state appellate court for human trafficking. And whereas rapid technological advances have created new and escalating risks for children, including online grooming, sextortion, and the misuse of artificial intelligence to create, manipulate, and distribute sexual content, as childhood has shifted from play-based to screen-based. traffickers and predators increasingly exploit social media, gaming platforms, messaging apps, and online platforms to target and coerce youth. And whereas online sexual exploitation is one of the fastest growing forms of trafficking, placing children and teens at heightened risk and underscoring the urgent need for prevention, education, and community vigilance, as online grooming and exploitation of children is no longer an if scenario, but a win, impacting families and communities across Iowa. Whereas the city of Solon joins Chains Interrupted in its commitment to community education, survivors services, legislative advocacy, professional training, and collaboration with law enforcement to prevent human trafficking and support survivors, including a partnership with the Lynn County Attorney's Office that helps secure the first conviction and sentencing in the state of Iowa under the law mandating life in prison without the possibility of parole for sex trafficking. Demonstrating the impact of coordinated community and prosecutorial efforts. Now therefore, I, Dan O'Neill, Mayor of Solon, Iowa, do hereby proclaim the month of January 2026 as Human Trafficking Prevention and Awareness Month, and encourage all citizens to become informed, remain vigilant both online and in our communities, report suspicious activity, and work together to end trafficking and exploitation in all its forms. For education, prevention, or survivor assistance, contact Chains Interrupted at 319-364-0222 to report suspected trafficking. Contact the Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-888-373-7888. And with that, we do have members of the Chains Interrupted
We are
here. If you'd
here.
like to get up and say a few words.
I promise to make it short. I'm Tish Young, the Chains Interrupted. This is Nikki Stallman. We don't need my time. Nikki Stallman, she's our outreach program coordinator. Solon has been a blessing when it comes to the fact that you are paying attention to your youth and you are open to training. I know a few years ago, we trained your public works department. We're happy to come in if you've had some turnover and refresh that as things change with artificial intelligence and online apps. You know, it's not just Snapchat, although Snapchat sucks. It's a bunch of other things too. And so we would love to come in and do that again. We appreciate your time every year. I'm grateful that you're willing to do this. We've had some good news, and Nikki's going to share some good news about the Solon School System.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to the Solon School District, to the board members of the school district, and specifically to Assistant Superintendent Josh Lyons for getting us into the school district with our prevention education information. We've worked with the 7th grade and a 10th grade history, or I'm sorry, 10th grade health classes. So they're just, it's been a blessing for us to get in there and talk to these young people before they meet predators online. So
chances are slim your child's not going to be groomed online, quite honestly. If you have a kid with a cell phone, something's going to come into that cell phone that just is depraved, quite honestly. So starting early and having that conversation from, you know, we want to talk about sex, we want to talk about drugs, we want to talk about drinking and driving, or drinking in general. We want to talk about texting and driving. There's all of these things. But please, please, please talk to them about pornography. Talk to them about the feelings that they feel when someone talks to them about something that's uncomfortable, and be a safe place for them to land. There's nothing more important than making sure that you are an easy person for them to come to and talk to. Practice not dropping our jaw. We have to make sure that we, know that we're here. You're going to be safe. I'm gonna do what needs to be done to protect you, and that in and of itself will help us prevent human trafficking from children, because it is not an if, it is a when. Just the way it's going to be, and I'm sure John Sheriff can tell us the same thing, right? It's not an if, it's a when. So thank you for your time. Can we get a quick picture, and you mind if you post it all over the place?
Yes.
Was that one? I'm fine with everybody have your wave before you walk out.
Okay.
Yes. Saying like a smile job. Smile.
Right? Well, thank you.
Thank you guys.
Yes, thank you very much.
Sir, sir. Yep. Takes us down to new business and item 16, Johnson County Sheriff Brad Duncan here. Brad.
Save me a trip across the room.
Hey, everybody, yeah, it's Brad Kunkel, Johnson County Sheriff. It's the time of year to come touch base about the contract. I'm a little later. But, that's somewhat intentional because I thought it'd be better to come when the new council members are here to not have to try and figure out another time to come in. So first of all, congratulations, you three, welcome to public service. I love my time on the council up here. I think you'll find it really fulfilling. Morning, you know, the public service, especially at this local level, you truly do get to see the impact of your decisions. Like you see it every day. I mean, it is very meaningful service and I really think you're gonna enjoy it. What I'll talk about real briefly before I dive into this is just kind of the history and why we have this relationship that we do with the city. Under Iowa code, you know, the code of Iowa requires cities to do a lot of things. And one of those requirements is to provide police services and public safety to the residents. The code leaves it up to the city on how you want to provide that service. Either the city council has their own police or they contract with another law enforcement agency. And that was tested, with a lawsuit back in the 90s, I think it was. There was a city in Jasper County that, decided they were gonna say, well, no, we're not gonna have our own police and the sheriff will just do it. And the county attorney stepped in and said, well, no, it doesn't work that way. And so they sued and took the city to court, and ultimately the Supreme Court upheld the state law that said, no, the city does have to provide this service and that the city has to just figure out how they're gonna do it. If you have your own or you contract with somebody else. And one of the points of logic the court made in the decision was if everybody followed that same line of thought, then what's to stop the county from saying, well, nah, the sheriff's not gonna do it, state patrol is just gonna come, provide law enforcement services. So police services are a required responsibility of the city, and then it's just up to you guys how you're gonna decide to do it. And so for as long as I can remember, and probably 20 or 30 years before that, the city is contracted with the sheriff's office for that protection. And then the question is really just, well, how much protection do you want? What's the cost? When I came into office in 2021, I held on to how the previous administration had done this arrangement, basically just a year after year, more like an MOU, where they would settle on, here's the amount of hours you're gonna pay for it, and here's the cost. And the previous sheriff was adjusting either the rate or the amount of hours every other year and, you know, kind of keeping some of that growth in place. But really what was happening is over time, the divide between what the city pays and the cost of a deputy sheriff really started doing this. We base the rate off of what a 7-year deputy sheriff is paid for their salary. Because if I look at the patrol division, the average length of service those deputies have, when you average it out, you're getting about, most of the time, somebody in that 7-year pay scale on our wage matrix. Right now, well, prior to last year, the cost you were covering was around 80, I think 75 or 80% of salary, for that 7-year deputy. But what was happening was, even if we were doing a $2 an hour every other year increase, but you know, the union negotiates a 4% raise, that divide started going this way. And so what we started on last year was a plan to kind of not close that gap, knowing we will probably never fully compress it to where you're paying for 100% of the salary and benefits, but start working towards a plan where we are closing that gap. So last year, instead of doing year over year, or year after year contracts, we entered into a 5-year contract. Rates are set per year, they go up $4 an hour per year. So you know what the cost is, you know how it's gonna affect your budget. And then we still have the latitude within the contract, if you want to adjust the hours, we can, whether it's and it's up to you how you do it, whether it's just a simple majority vote of the council or you pass a resolution. But that way, you know for the year what the rate is gonna be, and we agree on what the hours are gonna be. All of the contract towns that we have services with have entered in that same agreement, last year, so everybody's in a 5-year contract. It works really, really well. And the other thing we changed about it is we actually made them 2080 agreements, to make them get a little more legal teeth, if you will. And to really cement not only the validity of the agreement, but I think the message that it sends to, your community and your residents that, this relationship works really, really well. That it's a responsible way to provide your services. And if you were to do this on your own, you would spend a significant, greater amount of money, because you're never gonna actually start paying the true cost of what it takes to provide law enforcement services to your community. If you look at any other comparable town with 3,000-ish people who have their own police department, they're probably employing 4 to 6 officers, some of them, one of them probably is a chief. And if you think right away about what you're paying them for salary and benefits, capital equipment costs and training, it adds up very, very quickly. Whereas what you pay us this year is $57 an hour, I believe is what's in the contract. And you're covering 45 hours of dedicated time, but year after year, you always get way more time than you contract for, and we don't charge you for it. That's probably the quickest way I can explain the history behind it. Any questions about that? If not, I can dive into
So this
this
is,
piece of it.
we just finished year 1 of a 5-year deal, is that right?
Yeah, so
In year one.
we're in year
In year
one
one right now,
5-year
okay.
contract.
Thank you.
Yep, and so again, those rates are in there. And I mean, to be honest, I'd say you locked in those prices at a good time, because what we see and will probably continue to see is our union contracts will probably negotiate, if not higher wages, also with insurance wage increases that go up. We're probably still more doing this instead of trying to close the gap.
Sure.
So, and 3 years from now, we'll be going through this again and having to make those adjustments, but, we'll probably never really get to a place where you're covering 100% of salary and benefits. But like I said, you're not touching the costs of cars and training and depreciation and administrative costs and everything that goes along with it.
Yeah, and I think one thing too, that the 5-year agreement shows is just how strong of a partnership that we have and how comfortable we are with that. And I know that I can speak for all of us that we think you and your team, Brad, do an amazing job.
Thanks.
And it's not just a year over year. There's never a lame duck year. This is a 5-year contract because we have a great partnership and really enjoy working with you.
Thank you. No, we feel the same way. I just talked to a group of the deputies today and kind of explained, there's 99 sheriffs in Iowa. Every one of them has the latitude to decide how they're gonna do this. I know some sheriffs personally who would really have no desire to do small town law enforcement. On the other hand, I think it's a great opportunity for us as an agency, but also just in the spirit of how government works at the local level, to show that, there are ways that we really do benefit from working together. And why would we not try and do this? Because it benefits both of us. Frankly, I think it benefits the city way more, because it saves you a massive amount of money. So what I have tonight, it's the same stuff you see every year, but it's just kind of good to go over. When we break down, and forgive the small size, but I think you should all have a better copy. This is just kind of a history of where you guys have been for the amount of hours you contract. The bar graph on the right is the amount of hours you actually contract for. The orange on the top is the overage. Again, you always get more than you contract for. We don't charge it. And some of that is just by the nature of, if you contract, if we're doing 8 hours a day or whatever the math works out to be, and 3 deputies have to come up here on a call and they're all here for 2 hours. I mean, there's 6 hours on one call. Sometimes it's made up just on overages on one call. Sometimes it's special assignments, could be a variety of things. Jump to the next one. Just a little, the next 2 are the last 2 fiscal years. You can see where your calls for service is done. In FY 23-24, we had just over 1,800. The next year was 19 and some change, I believe. So a steady incline, which I would expect to see up here. We haven't quite seen the same thing in like Lone Tree, for example, was there Monday. They actually had a little bit of a dip. But this is more what I would expect to see for, if anything, from your size, but just also things are starting to kind of grow again when it comes to activity in the public safety world. Go to the next one, and I added this one in there, but it's also interesting to see that in the first 6 months of this fiscal year, you're on pace to beat last year's numbers. And I would suspect that trajectory is gonna stay the same.
All right, so real quick question for you. You're on view on there. That's officer initiated, right?
Yep, so that's really, I could probably change that term, because I've had that question before from the school district. What does on view mean? That's anything officer initiated. So that is traffic stops, community policing, I was talking to Tim before he left, it's anything we do at the school, or foot patrols at basketball games, or walkthroughs at the school, bar checks, business checks, anything the deputies are up here doing initiate on their own. Really, anything else we do is going to come in through the phone one way or the other, through the jack. Everything else winds up being on view. So yeah, those are just anything that's just generated by the deputy. But anyway, as I mentioned, you're on pace already in the first 6 months of this fiscal year to improve, to have higher numbers than you did last year. I would imagine if you graph this out, even compared to like the fire department's history every year, we're probably on the same overall trajectory and trend. And it's not only a function of just your population itself, but the Fat Tire is a perfect example. You know, as you draw more events, as you have more things, as people come through, there is that impact on public safety too. And you know, you're a destination for the cycling community, you're a destination for poker runs and motorcycles and everything else that has an impact on public safety. So as you look to improve and add to what can you do to draw people to town, just know that there is the cost of doing business for public safety as well. You go to the next one. And then you get this, this is when our deputies are up here doing their thing, they log everything they're doing. So every minute in the car is documented, and we break it down into what that call could be, whether it's accidents, criminal investigations, traffic, so you can see how the time is spent. Most of it does wind up being just routine patrol. It's that presence, it's that the deterrence and public safety and community policing service that we provide. And then you also see not only the amount of hours that winds up to be, but again, the overage that you get every month. You can jump through the next couple. And one more.
One more.
Yeah, right here is fine. So we also break down the types of calls so you can see what the activity is. You know, we break it down. We do also our NIVERS reporting every year through records. So everything we have to report to the federal government for crime stats. So we have all the data to show here's the amount of theft calls we receive, domestic, sexual assaults, death investigations, whatever it may be. I mean, we track all that. So if you ever have any questions about those things, I'm happy to talk about them. Some of the increases I think we're seeing in the towns and in crime in general, a lot of it has to do with theft anymore. Just anybody had a call saying you missed your Amazon fraud detection, anybody had one of those calls? I mean, the reason you get those calls is because occasionally they work and people lose thousands of dollars to scams. So those are gonna show up in here too. A lot of times, like I said, fraud or theft reports. We're seeing a lot more of those. And then these fraudsters even target municipalities. City of Swisher got hit last year before for like $70,000. I think they got their money back. 2 or 3 years ago though, Dubuque County, the city of Dyersville got into some trouble with some ARPA funding that was ripped off through a scam. It was like $600,000. That's a lot of money. So the point is, some of the theft jumps we're seeing are largely related to just scams and fraud. And then you can jump through the next two, go to the ICRs. One more. So then our ICR, so this is our incident report for any time. A call for service is one thing. So if we do a traffic stop or do a bar check, that gets a call for service number. It documents the date, time, location, and gives that call a particular number. whenever we wind up doing an incident report where there's been like a reported crime or some other activity, then we add a separate case number to it, or in our world, they call it an ICR number. So this is a little better idea of what actual like criminal activity and reports are going on in your community. And just to understand that the number of ICRs will never have the same number as the total offenses, because one ICR number, one incident could have multiple offenses that happen within it. The best one example I can give you is if we make a traffic stop and the guy is arrested for OWI, it's gonna be called service number, that's traffic stop. Gonna get that case number because it's a criminal offense, and that and then that OWI is that one charge. But let's say the guy has his 4-year-old kid in the back seat. So now there's a second charge of child endangerment. So there's gonna be one ICR number, 2 criminal charges. So that's why it's what, 63, 63, and then on the bottom right is a 81? 81. So that's why that number is higher, because a lot of times one report of criminal activity could have multiple crimes that occurred with it. But again, that's a better idea of what the actual like criminal investigations or other types of investigative activity that we have going on in your community are. Jump to the next one, it dipped by 5, which isn't 5 or 6, which isn't a ton. And sometimes one offense could even skew that number. One person could have 10 no contact order violations, and it's gonna have a big jump in that total number of charges. Then can go to the last one. But already we're on pace to outpace the numbers from last year too. So that is something to keep an eye on. And who knows where those numbers could really see that jump. As I mentioned, you could have 10 no contact order violations in one incident, or drunk driving starting to become a problem again, or whatever it could be, but these are the things to keep an eye on too. So I don't see a reason this year to adjust your hours. I think we're in a good place, but I do think as you grow, as the more lights come on and the conversations we had, these are the things you want to stay ahead of and make sure you're adding coverage as you grow so that you're not dealing with the complaints about coverage when you have more people here. People are wondering, well, why aren't the police around? What's taking so long? I would much rather have that coverage in place instead of trying to make up for the calls a bit. So that's the spiel in a nutshell. Any questions?
Brad, I have a couple.
Okay.
As far as doing this for the city, is that entirely up to you, or do the board of supervisors have to get involved?
Sorta. So
Kind of convoluted?
well, technically, the 2080 agreement typically would be between the city and the county. The agreements we have, the board agreed to let me be the signatory on these agreements. But if, let's say you came to me next year and said, hey, as a city, we would like you to hire an extra personnel, and we want that person working up here Monday through Friday. Since that's a hiring decision, and the board does have the budget oversight over it, so. And just for awareness in general, these 5-year contracts, when the board voted on them last year, the vote was 4-1. One supervisor did vote against it.
The other question I have, and I visited with you about this before, but I'll bring it up again. Has there been any discussion with our school district about an active shooter scenario? You not with that much?
Not recently. Last year, we did a large training operation at Clear Creek.
Yeah.
And when I said, it was the full, there was 160 volunteers.
Yeah, I was there.
I would like to do that with Solon sometime. It's a massive undertaking. It took us 9 months to plan it.
Yeah.
But we do ALICE training, we do active shooter training with the schools already. We provide that to the staff. We do active shooter training on our own, but I would like to do a drill like that up here.
I guess as a person that was involved in that, I would encourage you to ask the school to get involved with that. I learned a lot that day I was there, and our community is big enough now. I hope it never happens, but I think from a planning standpoint, it'd be well worth all of our time. I would just encourage you to visit that with them sometime again.
that is on my radar for this year.
Good.
I haven't told the school that.
Yeah. Thank you for that, because we've talked about that before, just having been through it over there. We have enough buildings now here in our school district, and it would involve the city of Solon one way or another. I think it's important to make sure we visit that, and the school is well aware of what's going on.
Well, and I can tell you from, actually, I just went through like a training and watched the videos from the Perry school shooting.
Sure.
And all the schools now have a radio in their school and that button to contact law enforcement. That person in that school was critical to the outcome.
Agreed.
I think that's one big reason why 2 people died and not a lot more.
Yeah.
Is because of the measures they had in place in the school.
Great, thank you.
Any questions or comments that has first, Brad?
Yes.
Would you give an opinion on the sheriff's involvement with animal control? Some of us have been opposed to it, Camino, for a long time. If we got more license money coming in, it'd be a good fund. And how do you about the pros and cons of it?
Would give me a specific example,
Under, our policy is that the sheriff handles, is that correct, Kenny, if I'm wrong? The
The
complaints
new
that come in,
contract
barking,
does
the
involve the
Yeah,
sheriff's
that you
department
guys
help.
handle it. And my objection has always been that you're not equipped and respectful, you're not trained in the way that it would be helpful. There aren't that many dogs and cats, but I think more and more all the time.
Mhm.
It's a revenue source that we don't use. And I wondered if your deputies object to having to go on a dog call or a pilot load or something like that. You know,
They
you're
object,
like-
they don't object to me.
well,
I look at it as part of what we do, it's part of the service we provide, but when you're talking about transporting animals and taking the shelter, that's what we worked out in the contract, was just an understanding of, we'll try and help locate an owner, but we're not gonna haul them to the Humane Society, that kind of thing. I don't think, frankly, I don't think it's a good use of our time, I don't think that's what you're paying us for. But it looks like most of the dog issues, especially up here, are just, and I was guilty of this when I lived over here, is like, I used to leave my fence open and my dog would get out. It's those kind of things. I think, say what you want about social media, but a lot of times that actually helps reunite people quicker than anything. It's just, hey, there's this dog over here, is it so-and-so's? Yep, it's mine. I think a couple times maybe we had to actually write citations for at-large or barking dogs. I would rather, I take the direction from you guys on how aggressively or how you want to handle animal complaints. And that's why we worded it that way too, but if there's something different you want to see done, we can talk about it, but what we have at Range and Tiffin, which is different because they have 24/7 service now, is we have dedicated space like at their public works building. We have people on call, but it's different because we are 24/7.
We've adopted a stray policy and it's working well. It involves Public Works, the Sheriff's Office and Cedar Valley Humane Society. And the two have a space. We work together to try to find the owner. But when we can't, then we have, the city takes over from there. And then we contract with Cedar Valley to pick up the dog for us or the cat. And so far it's
Still,
working
most of the time, somebody knows. Everybody kind of figures that it's so-and-so's dog and they tend to.
There's always the anonymous participant on Facebook.
I think it was just critical that we got the policy in writing within the contract with that as well.
Yeah, that was important. We had that specifically in there, knowing that animals are important to everybody. And that we needed some specific guidance in there because, we're not gonna round up a cat at 3 a.m. either. They hope it's somebody's cat or maybe it's one of the 50 that live at the female. We don't know.
people are reluctant. I just know from Mill Park, the old neighborhoods, they're very reluctant to call you because calling the sheriff on your name. And the most common complaints are the barking and the at-large cats, both of which seem immune to any kind of laws, any kind of enforcement whatsoever.
Barking's different, like, we can do, it takes a while, it's usually not, right, but if anything, not good. Take care of it, or start the process of the city
Get your
intervening.
attention.
And I'm very sympathetic to the barking dog problem, because when I worked late nights, I had a neighbor who dog barked during the day when I was sleeping, it was miserable. So we are absolutely here to handle barking dog calls too. The problem, let us know.
Good, thanks.
Well, Brad, thanks for coming in. We
Thanks, Brad.
appreciate the partnership.
As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you guys can all, feel free to reach out to me directly or go through Tammy. It's kind of up to you, whatever works for you, but if you need us to come back for anything, let me know, let Lieutenant Whiston know whenever he's here, or if there's something else you wanna see, by all means. You know, we know that Solon particularly take traffic enforcement very seriously, and happy to help and do what we can to make sure that, you know, we're taking care of your complaints too, because again, as you know, nothing gets people upset more than like blowing stop signs, speeding in their neighborhood. So if those are a problem, let us know and we'll do some enforcement too. But also know most of the time when we do that, we're also wind up citing the people that live in those neighborhoods. So usually it's the neighbors of the complainers that are the violators, but it's just the way it is. So. Okay.
All right.
Guys, thanks, Brad.
Thanks for all you guys do.
Thanks, Brad.
Right, that takes us to item 17, engineer report on McBride Point water connection. Dave?
All right, you have a packet in front of you and Cameron's going to pull this up on the TV. Audience. Tony, I'm gonna ask you a favor. If you can't hear me, just do this and I'll talk louder. Okay? So if you go to the next sheet, Cammy, this is an overview of the water system. And Gallery Acres West is shaded in red, clear on the west end. McBride Point is just east of the new highlighted in yellow. And then we have an 8-inch water main that runs back to Trail Ridge area where the Gallery Acres West meter pit, that's the main meter that we measure how much flow goes out into the system that leaves city limits. The wells are shown there. Well 3 is up in Old Mill Creek. Well 4 is down by the splash pad. There's also a 400,000 gallon ground storage tank out by the splash pad. As we work our way east, number 2 is right across from the Public Works shop by the old Public Works building. And the water tower, as you know, is Highway 1 and 5th Street. That's a 200,000 gallon tower. The next sheet just gives a quick summary. Well number 2. Constructed in 1960, produces roughly 300 gallons per minute currently. Well, number 3, constructed in 1998, 280 gallons per minute. Number 4 was constructed in 2010 at 250 gallons per minute. All 3 of those wells pulled from the Solarian Aquifer. The water tower, again, 200,000 gallons, and the ground storage at 400,000. So that gives you an overview of the assets. The well production, to go to the next sheet, Andy. We went through the last 5 years, 2020 through 2024 inclusive, and looked at the static level and the pumping level in the wells. We wanted to see if there was any sort of a long-term reduction in either of those levels as we went. And we did that for wells 3, 4, or 2, 3, and 4. And the next few sheets, if we go to the next one, Cameron, does show it well 2. And I don't know how well you can see that in the back, but it just shows that as we turn the well on, we drop down with the pumping level, and then as we turn the well off, it goes back up. So we're bouncing between the pumping level in the yellow and the static level, which is the well off between these two. And you'll see that there's some variations. The levels are usually higher in the winter and they're lower in the summer, and that's just because we pump more in the summer than we do in the winter. For irrigation purposes and just general use. Number 3, similarly, that one is fairly steady. We did have a period that we shut off for some repairs, and then number 4, you'll see that one we had to run a little bit harder in 2024 because we had number 3 off for a bit, so that one got used a little more and the drawdown was a little higher. You'll notice on the bottom the pumping level on number 4 does seem like if we were to draw a trend line there. Is a little bit lower. You'll see on wells as we use those a little harder, that they tend to have the formation plug up a little bit and they have a little less production. So the water level draws down a little bit more at the point right around the well, which is what this is showing. We go out every so many years when we start to see a big loss in production, and they'll pull the well, they'll clean it, and they'll acidize, they'll surge the formation and try to get that back to regular production. So you'll tend to see that on large well fields. Every well operates a little bit different because of the geologic formation around them. But in general, all of our wells are performing pretty well. Go to the next sheet. This is just a quick summary. And again, you'll see that there's seasonal variation. The lower part of this is in the winter. We see the peaks in the summer. There are some days there where we pumped quite a bit harder, and sometimes you have main breaks. Sometimes it's filling the water tower after maintenance. There's just different reasons for this, but you'll see some isolated spikes in there, and that's what that's representing. Sometimes it could be a fire, and then you put out a water to put out a fire, and you have to rebuild the reservoirs. But in general, you can see the trend, and roughly we're between 0.2 and 0.4 for most of our usage. The next sheet looks at our population. So you'll see on the bottom, we were trending along between 500 and 1,000 people from 1900 to about 2000, and then we hit our growth spurt. The last 20 years, we've seen a pretty good increase from 1,000 people to 3,000 people roughly. And you can see the percent change in there and the growth per year. What we're looking at is somewhere in that 85 is pretty aggressive. So when we go to the next sheet into our population projections, we went from 2020, which was our last census, out to 2045. 2045 would be 20 years from current. So that's why that number was used. And we just projected out 85 people per year, just to get a rough idea of what the increase in our water production and our usage is going to be. The next sheet is our study area broken out into our future land use plan, our 2080 agreement for a fringe area and so forth. So the yellow is the area that we've identified as potential growth around Solon. The area that's shaded in pink is currently developed county area that could potentially be served by this Gallery Acres water line. So we have two different areas that would have a demand on that water. The one that we're focusing on right now is the Gallery Acres line, which is the pink area that would be outside city limits. So the next three sheets are scenarios that we ran, and you're not going to see this very well from the back, so I'll talk through it. But it looks at the initial outside population of 43 Gallery Acres. It looks at a peaking factor of average peak day of 1.8 based off of evaluation of the last 5 years of our operating data. And we consider 600,000 gallons of storage being a 400,000 gallon storage and the 200,000 gallon tower. We look at a design fire flow of 2,000 gallons per minute. And the reason we look at that is when we use a model, the infrastructure that have currently with our main sites, we can't get more water than that for that system. So you might have facilities like the school or a church or something larger that by ISO standards, you want to get more water there. We just don't have the infrastructure to do that. And that was something we looked at when we were sizing the ground storage tank, is we could make it bigger, but we can't get that water there that fast. So unless we're willing to take on a lot of large scale improvements in the distribution system to put in larger mains, we're going to stay with that 2,000 GPM, which is above potential. Typically, when we talk about communities, they want 1,500 gallons per minute for residential fire. 2,000 gallons a minute gets you a pretty good flow. Pumper trucks, when they're using those, they want 1,500 to get good fog. So that's what we're looking at, is 2,000 GPM. To feel that's a good fire flow for the community. Normally you're looking at that for 3 hours. So we have 180 minutes listed on here. And we put all this into the evaluation. DNR's got some things they look at. They want to make sure that you can have your average day usage as storage. We have 600,000 gallons. Our average day is significantly lower than that. We want to make sure that our well capacity can keep up with our peak day, because we have to be able to replace that water that we use. And we have to do that with our largest well out of service. That's called a firm capacity. So even though we have a well that can do 300 GPM, we can't count that one. We've also went back and looked and said that, well, we're looking at this in 2015. our well number 2 was only 250 gallons a minute. We were able to get that bump back up when it was probably going to decrease. So just to be conservative, I didn't use that. I just put it back to the older numbers, 250 gallons a minute for 2 and 250 gallons a minute for 4. We pulled number 3 out of there at 280. It said if we have 500 gallons per minute of firm capacity, multiply that by 1440 minutes in a day. That gets you 720,000 gallons per day that we can produce with our largest well out of service. So we can add that to our storage of 600,000 gallons, and that gets us to about 1.22 million gallons that we have available. So now we start looking at, as we produce per day, plus the gallery acres, and we look at what the average day demand will be. We get to about 2040, and our peak day starts to hit what we can produce. We get to about 2050, and we're a little bit above. We get to about 80% of our average day demand is our storage, and we just look at that as an evaluation. We can get down to, if we look at 1.22 million gallons, we can get past 2065 and have our storage plus our peak day production with our largest well of service still meet our peak daily demand. If we throw a fire on there and we have to add in another 360,000 gallons, that's where we start to run into some issues. So right in that 2050 time period, that's what we would have issues back to the storage. If we wanted to look at it from the standpoint of where we would need a new well to cover all scenarios, we're looking at about 2030. If we add in the flushing for gallery acres 3 times per month instead of once a month, then it starts to bump those numbers up a little bit, but it's not much. We don't add much to those. You can see in 2065, that's 583 under one time, 586, so it adds about 3,000 gallons per day. Not a significant impact. We go to scenario number 2. We run through all that same evaluation, but under this one, we're going to have, we're going to add in gallery acres of 43 and McBride Point, a population estimated at 78 people, so the 26 connections. So this looks at both of these developments on the gallery acres one. And if you look back and forth between the two, we would go just slightly above. We're at 587,826 by 2065. We were at 583,848. So it's not a significant impact. The population growth is what's really going to hit us more than adding this area in. This is equivalent to about 1.5 years of growth. If you look at the combination of the two, that's the 78 at gallery acre or McBride and the 43 gallery acres. As you recall, we were adding 85 people per year. So we look at it as a population equivalent at about 1.5 years of growth. Scenario 3, we looked at that pink area and said, well, if we were to look at staging this and we added some of the outside growth in that western development that's in the county, 533 people by 2035, 828 by 2040, and 1,188 people by 2045. That's looking at the current population plus build out of that county development area. When we program that in here, that really starts to increase our demands, and our peak day goes up to about 1.175 million by 2065. And we start to exceed our peak day demand much earlier on this. We get to 113% in about 2035. So you can see that growth outside of the city would necessitate that we build that well earlier. Once we put that extra well in, we get quite a bit more water, and then it's not much of a concern. Our storage and our wells can keep up. The next sheet is just a summary, and then we can go back and touch on some of these areas you might have questions on. So this talks about the McBride Point, that's that, and only McBride Point, considering Gallery Acres is already there. Gallery Acres has a main that it takes them about 17 days to turn the water over under their current usage. 17 days in water age is pretty high. Your chlorine residual drops. We'd like to see that 10 days or less. So we'd like to turn it over about 3 times per month. That would require that they flush, and when they flush, they discharge it to waste. It goes either into a ditch or a storm sewer or something else and runs off. So we're not using that water. They're buying it, but it's going for no benefit. It's just to get the chlorine residual back up. So if we add in, so we're roughly right now, in order to flush, we're looking at about 55,000 gallons monthly that is going to waste. If we add in McBride, that takes our average monthly usage from 78,000 up to about 220,000. And we turn that over in about 6 days. So now that water is being sold and being used, we don't have to flush any residual stays where it needs to be because the water age isn't as high because it's being used before we have that issue. So there is some benefit to allowing them to hook on in the sense that even though we have to provide a little bit more water, all of it is being used for domestic purposes. We're not wasting some of it. Keep in mind that they pull their water out of the same aquifer we do. So if they stay on their well, it still comes out of the slurry aquifer from the Solon area. So we're not pulling more water out of the aquifer. We're just changing the location. And then we're able to do this in a manner that solves their problem, solves some of the flushing issue. And we charge them twice as much as we do in-town residents. So they're paying for the impact that they have. They're paying for the water more than the are. And I know there's been some discussion about they're not in town, they don't pay taxes and some of that. That was part of the reason that rate was set higher, was acknowledging that they're outside of town, they're getting a benefit that we provide to our in-town residents, and we're not getting the same contribution as far as some of the other cost allocation that we would normally. So that's really the overview. What I wanted to make sure we understood is that there are some general rules of thumb here. So 10 people at 75 gallons per day, this average day, if you multiply that by 2 for a peak day, that gets us to 1 gallon per minute for well production. So every 10 people that we add, we take a gallon per minute. The wells produce 250. So we're looking at a very small percentage. If we look at it as a percentage of the total production, we're at roughly 0.4% with the 2 wells. So it's pretty small, but it is an impact. And I want to make sure that you understand that that does accelerate our well period where we have to put in a new well. When we look at our growth, assuming the growth stays steady with the projected. So you're looking at roughly 1.5 years of accelerated schedule. We do have connection fees, so everybody that connects pays the connection fee, and that goes into help pay for this infrastructure. And then we're also charging them twice the rate. So all of those things taken into consideration gives you a pretty good overview of what we're dealing with. If anybody has any questions on any information, I'd be more than happy to go through it in more detail.
Well, I only had one question, and this is awesome. I love the looks of it. With the scenarios, this is like between now and 2065, this is assuming that the city puts in no new wells. Is that correct?
That's correct. We would just be working on the current firm capacity. It does indicate when those numbers turn red that we're going to get into a point where we're deficient, and that's where we need to look at putting in another well to take care of that. If we had another well, we were able to get past that 165.
But it's unlikely that as you grow, that in that time period that you won't have to put in more wells. So correct.
We are going to need a well in that time period, whether or not they look on, and whether or not we can.
Okay, thank you.
One question on that is also just confirming that I heard it correctly, that it's currently, if we did not proceed with connecting with McBride Point, about roughly 55,000 gallons per month that would come out of the aquifer in addition to what McBride Point's using, that is just being dumped, it's pretty much being flushed with that. So from a conservation standpoint, we would conserve more water from the aquifer connecting to McBride Point than if not. Okay.
And they have to pay, and Gallery Acres has to pay for that 55,000 gallons each month, right?
That was factored into the agreement.
Okay.
We entered into it.
You guys have any questions over?
Well, I reviewed it pretty good before you started, so I got a pretty good understanding. Makes sense. From the city standpoint.
Any questions that you have?
Yeah, I've got 2.
Yes.
And again, I'm not an engineer, so if this is a dumb question, you can tell me. But well number two, let's see, it's constructed in 1960. So it's what, 65 years old? How long do wells last? I mean, before we would eventually have to replace that one. I mean, what's the lifespan of that, so that way, is it a situation where when we need to add on a well, we're gonna have to replace another existing one just due to age? Like, how long what's their lifespan?
We have wells that were drilled in the early 1900s that are still producing.
Okay.
If you pump them hard, it shortens the lifetime. If you have issues with corrosive soils around them, or you have electrolysis where you have grounding and it's going to the casing and it deteriorates the casing, you may have to recase that well, but you can do that and still get some extended life out of it. But I would say that if we looked at getting much more than 100 years out of a well, that's pretty aggressive. If we have wells that are in areas that we know are being pumped hard, or we have wells that have no corrosivity issues, and those tend to be a shorter life cycle as well.
Okay. And then the saline aquifer, right? Silurian, okay. Does that aquifer, I'm thinking of like the Mississippi aquifer, how huge and massive that is. What other, does that just serve the Solon area, or does that serve any of our other communities in Johnson County? Does North Liberty pull from that?
Yeah, so Oroville pulls pretty hard from the Silurian. Tiffin has wells in the Silurian. North Liberty, we have a few other communities that are doing that as well. A lot of these small rural subdivision wells also pull from either the Devonian, which is just above, but considered the same hydrologic unit.
Okay.
They pull from the Silurian, there's a Devonian formation. So most people in this area are going to pull from the Silurian because it's an easy source to access. If you go deeper, you get to the Jordan. There are some restrictions on that. So some of the communities like Marion, for example, they have Silurian wells. Hiawatha has Silurian wells. Lynn County, Johnson County are pretty high demand on Silurian, which is part of the reason that the USGS just did that study. But you'll see that when you look at those wells, for example, we had a drought year, let's say with 2012. Somewhere in there, a lot of communities had issues with the water just because of the droughts. People pump harder, and there's not as much replenishment of the water now. So you saw a lot of the rural subdivisions; those people were out there putting extensions on and lowering the wells to get water above the pump again. But that's all in this general area. So you'll see Cedar County, Lynn County, Johnson County. Those tend to pull pretty hard and have the growing communities.
Okay.
Very much development.
So would it be your opinion then, from a Solon population standpoint, right? Just if we hooked up to McBride Point, GAW's an already done deal, we're not necessarily increasing the population load on the aquifer, because those people are already, whether it be through their subdivision wells or other community, they're getting their water out of the same area as us right now. So us hooking up to them is just a courtesy or a business deal. Coming, like you said, we're just pumping from a different location, but it's all coming from the same huge aquifer.
Right.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Andrew, any questions that you want? Yeah, nothing overall, but I think the intent of tonight is just information sharing. Talked with Tammy ahead of time and thought, especially with it being meeting number one for the majority, we do not want to have a vote on such a big, come on. I with the mayor, we use them to it versus rip off the Band-Aid, for you guys with that, but it's just based on everything you see. If there are additional questions that we have, I wanted to make sure we didn't put Dave on the spot and make him try to calculate things right off the top, but if there are other more detailed questions that we have, well, definitely we can do a Q&A or FAQ on the website like we did previously leading up to this point. Other questions, comments?
If I could ask something there, it was hard to hear you. You tried, thank you. But my question for you is, what everyone is neglecting to address is what we just learned last spring, and the word is finite. And that's what some of the people that we're hoping to bring to Solon are saying to me, is that everyone's just assuming that that is unlimited water. And because we're all getting the water from the same aquifer in this area, and you're talking about McBride Point, et cetera, what you're not addressing is there's only so much water. And if we're giving it to McBride Point, and it's all of our technology and our staff and our infrastructure that we've paid for, we're giving it to them, this limited, finite amount of water, then the developments that pay taxes here that we need, that would be going on here, part of the city of Solon, that limited water is going to another development that doesn't pay any property tax. And the concern of a lot of people, and what I'm learning, talking to some of these people who are really out there, I mean, in terms of their vision, they're saying that this is what we need to start looking at as a planet, not just as a community, is how we use our water responsibly. And Solon's water, or Solon that pays taxes, I think is a strong argument here.
So-
That's not been addressed. Sorry.
So I just wanted, if you had a specific question for Dave with that, I know that's definitely.
That was kind of my question, did it not come across?
I didn't know if
What
there
was
was
his
something
thought on what I
specific.
said? I guess. Sorry. I tried.
Going back to what we talked about, they're already developed out there, they're already using the water's coming from the Silurian aquifer. So what you're talking about is their use of our system to get the water
Yes,
out there,
exactly.
which we're not creating a higher demand on the water. They're already pulling out of the Silurian, we're just changing the point that gets withdrawn. So if their usage stays the same as it does now, and they don't pull it out of their well, they pull it out of our well, it's still coming from the Silurian aquifer, so we're not creating a higher demand on the aquifer.
You're talking about McBride Point, I'm
Yeah.
talking about this regional water supply and the whole issue that's before Solon eventually.
And it's a question of growth. If we continue to allow growth, that's going to put a higher demand on the aquifer. So I think that's more your question is, are we going to continue to allow accelerated growth in Solon that's going to put additional stress on the aquifer? Is that what you're asking?
I've assumed all along that these were done deals, McBride Point and Gallery, even though we've argued about that. And that is all the same water, but again, it's also our infrastructure, our staff's time. It's not just a clean situation. We are involved, staff and financially. And I don't think that's being or been discussed in any of this, this is our water, our infrastructure, our staffing and our tax dollars. And McBride Point, McBride Estate, and the amount of water that we're wasting, when this was all approved in December 2017, we talked about what, 10,000 gallons 3 times a month, my understanding, the flushing. But there was never a reason why we should be worried about wasting this water, and now all of a sudden, it's a justification to go one step further and hook up another development. Recognize it's been decided, pretty much. But I think we didn't talk about these things at the first, when you approved it, December 7th, 2017, and now we're looking at the problems that were created and how this is a justification for doing one more development. And that's just for these two, McBride Point and Gallery. I think we just get in deeper and deeper, and we justify going further by the mistakes that we might alleviate some waterways. The last thing that we did, and we really didn't discuss it. It was just all right, we'll dump it 3 times a month.
They're paying double the rate, plus the rate brother.
Correct, there's no debating that, but that's not even close to what we're paying with our taxes. And even accepting that, we need property tax and we need people to pay for the sewer treatment plant, 35 million.
With that, I am gonna stop, this has nothing to do with the sewer plant.
It's just an extension of what we're talking.
This is just for water, this is not wastewater.
I'm sorry.
This does not involve anything with wastewater, which would be the wastewater.
No, I'm just talking about the justification of why we would want to have taxpaying money and not just somebody paying for it on it. Even though they're paying twice for it. What
Do we need to
get
have a
for
motion
taxpayer.
on this?
Thank you.
The only direction that may be given is that if the council supports, directing our city attorney to begin to draft a resolution, that would be the only direction if the council felt ready to do that. But then it would come to the council at a later time for a vote.
If a resolution is drafted, is it something that if it were drafted to approve and is voted down, is it something that could come back up? I just want to make sure that we have all the information that we need before well, I don't want to kill the process with it if we don't have all the information we need with that. So what's the process if we were to give direction to Kevin to move forward with drafting a resolution if it does not pass the vote? How does the application process and everything stand from there?
At that point, it dies, unless there's a change to the application request of some sort. So the resolution is important because there's agreements that are gonna follow that, and we do not want to, we don't want our city attorney spending time on that next level of drafting some pretty complicated agreements without knowing the council is in support of that. So the resolution, directing him to draft a resolution is not of a direction for approval. It's to get something in front of you so that you can vote on. And by voting yes to that resolution is basically saying yes to the providing water service, so that then we can take the next step and draft the needed agreements.
And even if we do that, they could still say, McBride Point could still come back and say, we've decided to go a different route. Just because we approve it doesn't mean they have to take it, correct?
No.
Okay.
So I guess with that, as far as information goes, the five of you feel like you have enough information to form an opinion as far as a vote goes, or is there additional information that you would like?
I'm gonna go back, I would move, I would do it, yeah.
I'm good.
Just feel like you have enough information.
And I would like to review it a little longer, if I'm being honest. So, no, I don't at this time. I'm on board with it. I mean, if you need a little bit extra time to review it, we've got. I mean, we've still, it's not like it's gonna be done tonight. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, so.
Do you feel like if we were to move forward, Matt, in a couple weeks, at the next regular meeting, it'd be 2 weeks from now, you feel like 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Helps give enough time to get your information, Q&A?
Yeah.
I think that's exactly what you have.
Yep.
So it sounds like there's, at least without leaning one way or the other, folks feel that they have the information needed to have a vote, or can get that within the next couple weeks.
Yeah.
Gives us a couple weeks to get the president feedback as well.
And this is, and by no way saying yes or no to it, it's just saying that we're okay with it, with Kevin moving forward with going this process.
You'd have to have an agreement approved later that with all the details in it.
So sounds like there's a consensus that there's support to move forward with prepping a resolution, and we'll have further discussion and future posts.
Oh, yeah. Voting or me?
All right, that takes us to item 18, the fiscal 27 budget workshop.
I just put a schedule in your packet. So what happens in January is we meet pretty much every Wednesday. We just got the evaluation information from the county on Monday, so that didn't really give us a lot of time to have information ready for tonight. So our first budget meeting will be on next Wednesday at 5:30. And we'll start that off. That'll be the only item on the agenda, so we'll start right in looking at all the budget information that the League of City provides to cities, and then we'll look at capital equipment schedules, we'll look at expenditures and revenues, and just kind of work through a process that seemed to work well for us in past years. So plan on next Wednesday, a special budget meeting at 5:30. Then the following Wednesday is a regular council meeting, and we'll tack on some budget discussion at the tail of that meeting, depending on how much time we have on the, obviously the regular agenda items are priority. And then if needed, we'll have another meeting, that last Wednesday in, January. Typically between those three meetings, we can get the bulk of it done and at least get us to a point that we don't have to start meet quite so often.
I'm just kind of to recap too, because I know it's a lot coming at you, especially your first year on council with that. So we always meet the first and third Wednesdays of each month. during budget season, we will, in January, we will meet each Wednesday, assuming we have the tentative meeting on the 29th, and then just jumping ahead to April 1st. It's the same night as a regular council meeting. We have typically done the special meeting. It needs to be a meeting by itself. Where the only thing on that agenda is the tax levy. We've typically done that prior to the regular council meeting with that. So just if you think outside of the first and third Wednesdays, we'll meet each week in January tentatively. Early meeting on April 1st, and then there's also a potential special meeting April 22nd on there. So just as we think calendars with that. Thank you for laying out the schedule. Any questions over the schedule? It's gonna be like drinking out of the fire hose here for the first month. So definitely ask lots of questions. If there's anything we can do to help, let us know how we can help you with that. But it's we're very fortunate having city staff that we have to prepare the budget, how they do, and they make it pretty easy. So we'll plan on crunching some numbers. Do it, lady. All right. With that, we take this to other business with the new council committees just laid out tonight. Don't have any updates. As items come up, we will definitely be meeting as committees on those. Which takes us to item 20, the city clerk. Use anything? Item 21, city administrator comments. Yeah.
I wanted to let everybody know that no items have been submitted for planning and zoning this month. As Dave mentioned, we're looking at some preliminary concepts of the turf facility and another small subdivision, but not ready for any formal approval or process yet. Christmas tree pickup is going to be the 16th and the 30th. Also wanted to welcome the new council members. Get with me at your convenience so we can get your paperwork and your email set up. And then also wanted to welcome Amy Randall, our finance clerk, who this is her first official meeting. She's going to be participating in the budget process so she can kind of learn the ropes. So, yeah, thank you.
It's item 22, council comments.
Yeah, a couple things. One thing that going through the election process that I heard a lot from people, they want more business in town, and I quickly countered that with, that's a great idea as long as you're willing to support. And then sometimes you get some different ideas. The thing that my gist of it is I would like to remind that anytime that our city tax dollars are being spent on anything, I think it's imperative that we look very local first, statewide next, and if we gotta go outside the box, let's do that. But I looked at the list of stuff tonight, it looks really good that we approved to pay. It's just a friendly reminder that our city can't grow and our businesses can't grow unless we all are willing to help support that. And in order for the community to work, it takes everybody. The other thing I like to just say, I've been to a couple meetings now and have in the past, the guy sitting there, I appreciate you being here. I know it's not the funnest thing you want to do on a Wednesday night, but I would say this, it's important that you're here. And that from my standpoint, I notice it. And I just want to say thanks, because it's important that you guys are here doing your job. Because if you're not doing your job, we have issues. Bottom line. So from this council member's perspective, thank you very much.
I'd also like to thank all the city staff and for getting ready for budget season. And Liz, congratulations on 5 years. I was on that hiring committee, and when other people interviewed, then we got to your interview, you just knocked everybody's socks off. So we didn't know not a shot to get you to come to Solon or not, but we were really happy when you did, and we're happy that you're here. So thank you for all that you do over at the library, and thank you guys for all the work that you guys do, and all the city staff for making this budget season. I know it's gonna be great. It has been the last few years, and it makes it really easy. I know Dan and I have had conversations about previous councils that he was on and how difficult budget season can be, and it's always, you guys always just make it a breeze. So thank you all very much.
I'm not gonna pile on, but I don't disagree with any of that, so I appreciate all that we do. We have a tremendous staff here. That,
Move to adjourn.
move to adjourn. All right, the motion by Farley.
Second.
All right, motion by Farley, and second by Morris. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?